Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL. Today, we've got a full slate of updates for you guys today, with Eurobasket now just 6 days away. That is certainly approaching. That's going to be here very soon. Kristaps Porzingis finally hit a bump in what has otherwise been a very flawless summer of exhibition basketball. I mean, he's looked great. He had his first pretty poor game yesterday, so we're going to break that down. But, the poor game didn't just come for no reason. This was a big matchup against a very well-known player in the NBA that we've actually talked a lot here on this channel. So we're going to break down his matchup against Giannis Antetokounmpo and what it could mean for both Latvia and the Hawks moving forward. Then we're going to pivot to Kristaps' overall impact and why his addition has transformed the Hawks into a legitimate Eastern Conference contender, just how he impacts Atlanta's offensive and defensive schemes. We're going to break that all down. We're also going to tackle a fan-submitted question about whether Nickeil Alexander-Walker's new contract will eventually create an overlap with Dyson Daniels, and if that could eventually push Na into trade discussions. It's a very interesting topic. I'm glad he brought it up because I certainly want to discuss that. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then finally, at the very end, we're going to preview a heavyweight early season matchup between the Atlanta Hawks and the Cleveland Cavaliers, and kind of what the two will have, in relation to each other, just going over the course of the season. It's going to have heavy playoff implications, long before the postseason even begins. So plenty to cover today. So without further ado, let's get right into it and talk about how Kristaps Porzingis had been on an absolute tear in the Eurobasket preliminary exhibitions that have been going on for quite some time now. Until yesterday, he had scored no fewer than 20 points in each contest. I mean, he was showing real dominance on both ends of the floor, looking every bit like the versatile big man that made the Hawks go all in on acquiring him this offseason. It certainly wasn't a crazy package, but this was someone who the Hawks did give up a good bit for. A first-round pick and then 2 rotation players is no light package, to say the least. But nonetheless, Greece and Giannis Antetokounmpo, the dominant NBA big man who's a 2-time MVP and a 1-time NBA champion, so they faced off, and it was a very different story for Atlanta's big man, KP. Giannis made his summer debut, actually, and after sitting out the earlier exhibition games, he wasted no time reminding the world why he's one of the game's most dominant players. Giannis seriously might still be the best player in the NBA. Don't let recency bias fool you. The Bucks have done a very poor job of putting a solid roster around him, but Giannis is still that guy. He scored 25 points and grabbed 10 rebounds as Greece rolled to a 104-86 victory over Porzingis and Latvia. The most impressive part was 20 of those points came in the first half alone. Real dominance in limited minutes in that first half, where he shot an incredible 8 for 9 from the field in just over 10 minutes of action. I mean, that's ridiculous. He's quite a player, man. Latvia, to their credit, played a stronger second half, for sure. But by then, the damage was done. It wasn't something that they could come back from. Kristaps Porzingis was held to just 7 points in 17 minutes. Very rough game. He missed all 4 of his 3-point attempts and couldn't really find a rhythm at all offensively. Defensively, his main target was slowing down Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he actually chose a calculated approach to it. He gave him space to shoot. He really, kind of slacked off when Giannis would have the ball anywhere other than the paint. When he was on the perimeter or even stepping into the deep mid-range, Porzingis was just chilling in the paint. He wanted no part of letting biting defensively and then letting Giannis just immediately drive past him. He staying back in the paint did not end up benefiting Porzingis. It's typically a sound strategy and a pretty smart way to defend a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, but in this case, it backfired. Giannis was knocking down all of his jumpers, something that makes him virtually unstoppable. If Giannis ever gets a reliable jumper like that, he's literally so easily going to be the best player in the NBA, because that's really the only thing holding him back. For Porzingis, like I said, this was his first real struggle of the summer, and given how consistent he's been, it's hardly any reason for concern. This isn't something that Hawks fans should be worried about. Everyone has bad games, even facing even a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, who's faced all the competition in the world, but facing Giannis is always a different story. It's about as tough as it gets. The good news, though, for Hawks fans is that Kristaps remains healthy, engaged, and just days away from raising his intensity as Latvia prepares for official Eurobasket play beginning in 6 days. So, if anything, this setback might serve as a valuable reminder for him to ramp up and be ready when the real games begin, and hopefully he'll be ready and healthy for the 2025-26 2025-26 NBA season where he'll take the floor with the Atlanta Hawks. But speaking of that, stepping back from this one game, let's talk about what Porzingis means for specifically the Atlanta Hawks going into the 2025-26 NBA season. So when he was acquired from Boston earlier this summer in that major trade that really kind of set off the offseason, it signaled a clear turning point for the franchise. It truly changed their identity in just one simple move. Up until that moment, Atlanta was an exciting team with promise. There's no doubt about that. Despite how last year ended, I mean, obviously they had injuries to Jalen Johnson, and the core really just wasn't playing together. They didn't get to see the floor together a whole lot last season, but in the flashes that they showed, in the games that they played together in the earlier half of the season, they looked amazing. But not one that most analysts viewed as a serious contender in the East, that young core going into this upcoming season. But the arrival of Porzingis did flip that narrative. Additions like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard were excellent supplementary moves, but it was Kristaps himself who truly set the tone for this summer of transformation under new GM Monty Soleil, who has had quite the first offseason as the GM of the Atlanta Hawks. So, I mean, what Porzingis brings to the floor is certainly very unique. Offensively, he's one of the most dangerous stretch bigs in basketball. He shot over 41% from deep last season in Boston, which is an absurd clip for a player his size. I mean, no doubt. I mean, that gravity completely changes how defenses are going to play Atlanta. I mean, I was watching a lot of clips from last season just earlier today, and it's hilarious just watching how defenses did not care what Clint Capella was doing with the ball. Clint didn't play a whole lot last season because he did deal with that injury that had ended up sidelining him for the rest of the season. But when Clint had the ball like anywhere that wasn't directly at the rim, everyone just sagged off. Kind of like similar to how Porzingis was trying to guard Giannis yesterday, but two very different players there, two very different conversations to be had there. The teams can no longer simply collapse on Trae Young drives like they have in the past, resulting in Trae getting his shot blocked at the rim or shade over to shooters like Kennard or Risache. Porzingis demands respect well beyond the arc. Him and Trae, Porzingis and Trae last season were actually the two leaders in the deepest 3-point range last season. It was Trae Young, Kristaps Porzingis, which is it's going to be super fun to watch. I mean, opposing fans are going to pretty much crash out if when Trae is knocking down a logo three and then the next possession Kristaps is knocking down a logo three. On the defensive side, he provides something that the Hawks have lacked for years, a true interior anchor. I mean, he's a legitimate rim protector. I mean, the closest thing we've had to what Porzingis is going to bring to them as early as next season is 2021 Clint Capella. And we saw how effective we were with a big that was, in his athletic prime. That certainly dialed down quickly. But nonetheless, we appreciate Clint for what he did in 2021 because he looked certainly dominant. He honestly should have been a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year that season. But Kristaps is going to be the closest thing that we've gotten to that, and Kristaps is a better rim protector just in general. So I mean, he's legit. It's going to free up players like Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu to take more risks defensively without always worrying about what's behind them. I mean, health is of course the biggest question mark when we're talking about a guy like Porzingis. Last year with Boston, he missed significant time due to illness and lingering injuries. He has never played a fully healthy season in the NBA since entering quite some time ago. And I think Atlanta knows that, going in. We don't expect Porzingis to play a fully healthy season, but we want to keep him as healthy as possible, especially for the postseason. It's something that Atlanta is going to have to carefully manage, but I think they will. The bottom line is that Kristaps Porzingis does things that no one else on this Hawks roster can do. He stretches the floor, protects the rim with ease, makes smart reads as a passer, and complements Atlanta's young core beautifully. The synergy with guys like Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Zachary Risache could seriously be special. I mean, my favorite thing about Kristaps Porzingis is not like the deep shooting. It is how underrated he is as a passer, from the high post and, pairing that skill with the athletic cutters like we just mentioned, Dyson and Zachary, and the versatile wings, just everyone on this Hawks roster. It could unlock a whole new dimension of offense. I mean, think about that connection that Jalen and Onyeka have developed over the years. Think of that like times 50. I mean, Kristaps' skill set is going to be great alongside Jalen Johnson, especially. I'm super excited to see how that front court really works out together. I mean, if he stays healthy, Hawks fans are going to witness the best front court play this team has had in a long, long time. So now, moving on to a great fan question from the comment section in yesterday's video. User at Noah O'Neal 13 asks, could NAW's contract and overlapping skill set with Dyson make him a trade piece if they don't want to invest more money money into the same archetype of player? It is a fascinating question, a very detailed one, but I think the short answer is no. In today's NBA, having multiple versatile defenders is never a problem, at least in my opinion. If they can hold their own offensively, the more the merrier. That's always an issue with these defensive dominant players. I mean, they do struggle offensively a lot of times, but I think these guys are both going to be solid offensive players. Both Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels fit the mold of what Atlanta's trying to build, especially going forward. And if Trae Young is a part of that core moving forward, which he very well should be, I mean, they're strong perimeter defenders. I mean, very, very strong perimeter defenders who can guard multiple positions, and that's rare. That's exactly the kind of depth and flexibility you want in the postseason. These dogs on defense. Offensively, though, they are not redundant, and this is the biggest part of why I don't think their skill sets are going to overlap. Nah has developed into a reliable catch and shoot option who can occasionally create off the dribble. It's not his biggest strength, but he can certainly do it. But at this stage in his career, he is more or less, he is who he is. We know what we're getting out of Nah, a solid rotational scorer with great defensive tendencies. Dyson Daniels, meanwhile, still has considerable upside. This is not to be taken lightly. He handles the ball more often. He's a creative playmaker, and he's still just 22 years old, and he has so much more room to expand his offensive game. And last season, he averaged 14 points a game, so this isn't a guy who's just a complete negative on offense. I mean, he's a work in progress, absolutely, but this is a guy who seriously could average 17 points a game next season with a completely different offensive skill set than Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So, I mean, while both bring defensive excellence, their offensive skill sets complement each other way more than they overlap, in my opinion. I mean, could Nah eventually become a trade chip, deeper into his contract? I mean, sure. His $16 million per year does make him a very movable contract. That's a very tradable contract in 2025. Obviously, they aren't going to trade him for a good while, especially if the Hawks want to consolidate for another star sometime in the future. Maybe, just maybe, in a couple of years, Anthony Edwards were to request out of Minnesota, and then the Hawks would be like, okay, we can package this guy, and one of those guys be Nah, and I'm just throwing out hypotheticals here, but I don't see this as an immediate problem whatsoever. As for Dyson, his just kind of on the conversation of contracts, his rookie extension looms, and I expect it to come in somewhere between the $20 to $25 million annually. And the Hawks would be wise to lock that in sooner rather than later. I kind of expect it to be done by the start of the season, but you never know. If I had to guess, it would be like last year's Jalen Johnson extension that got done in October. This could be very well like the same thing, just a little bit cheaper because Dyson hasn't proved as much as Jalen. But you can't really say that because Dyson has been much more healthy. But nonetheless, it should be interesting. It should be around Jalen or somewhat cheaper. I mean, Atlanta's front office has seriously shown some patience with extensions, as we all know, as we've been covering the Trae Young extension, which has been looming for all of the offseason. But I mean, Daniels is too important to let dangle. Keeping both him and Nah is the safer and smarter bet for now. But down the line, I mean, that's certainly something to think about. But yeah, I can't wait to see them share the floor together because they do have very different offensive skill sets and they're both great defenders. So I really don't see why it wouldn't work out. Finally, let's look ahead to a game that I have personally had circled on the schedule since the release. That first matchup between the Hawks and Cavaliers on November 2nd. So this matchup concludes a 4-game road trip for Atlanta, and it comes right after an NBA Cup matchup against the Pacers. It's the type of early season test that has that playoff intensity. It feels like playoff basketball, and Cleveland is a perfect measuring stick for the Hawks' new look roster. I mean, just seeing how they would compete against a team like the Cavs. The Cavs, obviously led by Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, Darius Garland, DeAndre Hunter now, the former Hawk, are widely expected to be at the top of the East. I mean, they were the number one seed in the Eastern Conference last season. Now with how wide open it is, they were a team that, luckily did not suffer any injuries to any of their top players. So this is a team that should still stay at number one. However, in my personal predictions, I have the Knicks actually as the number one seed, as unfortunate as it is to say, just because I believe in, the roster moves that they made in the offseason more than what the Cavs did. But nonetheless, the Cavs are still going to be really good. They've actually built a strong, balanced team that shares a lot of similarities with Atlanta's roster. I mean, both teams rely on their dynamic guards, versatile wings, and dominant rim protectors. Key matchups abound. I mean, DeAndre Hunter against Cleveland's wings is one to watch. Against Atlanta's wing, because this is going to be a revenge game, of sorts for Hunter, because this will be his first time playing Atlanta since, the trade. But the real spotlight, falls on the bigs, Porzingis and Onyeka Okongwu, against Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Mobley is the reigning defensive player of the year. Now, whether he deserved it or not is a certain conversation to have, but nonetheless, he's shut down many star bigs in big moments, and Hawks have got to, have Jalen Johnson healthy. Really, that's the biggest thing. How Atlanta's front court fares here should be, a real indicator for their playoff ceiling. That'll be certainly something to watch. And then, of course, all eyes will be on the guards. Trae Young and Donovan Mitchell, they are the headliners for this. Both have immense talent. Both are really in their primes, and both have been questioned about their ability to lead teams deep into the postseason. I think it's unfair for really both of them. But Donovan Mitchell has never made it past the second round, so that is certainly something that. Trae's been past the second round. So it's a valid concern, I guess, for Mitchell, but not really for Trae. For Trae especially, though, this is a statement game, just comparing to other star guards in the East, especially with his contract extension negotiations looming. A signature performance in Cleveland could go a long way towards solidifying his value. Both to the Hawks and really across the league. If Atlanta wins this one, particularly on the road, to close a long trip, the national conversation around the Hawks could shift dramatically. It's the type of game that could put Atlanta firmly on the map 1 month into the season. Atlanta seriously played very well against the Cavs last year, so, with this much improved roster, I don't see why they couldn't own that season series once again. So that's going to be all for today's episode of Hawks Latest. We covered Kristaps Porzingis' tough matchup with Giannis. We broke down his impact on Atlanta's roster moving forward, discussed the Dyson-Na overlap question, and previewed a fascinating Hawks-Cavs showdown, just how that matchup could be for the rest of for all of the 2025-26 season. So as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Porzingis' off night is anything to worry about, or any indicator of his health or skill set moving forward? And how do you see the Na and Dyson pairing working out this season? Thank you guys for tuning in once again. I'm your host, Zach Langley. If you guys liked the video, please be sure to. If you guys enjoyed the breakdown, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update here on Hawks Latest. We're going to be pumping out videos every single day, keeping you guys informed on the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. But once again, I know I just said this, but thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.